Hey guys, Kiperina just dropped, so let's figure out how to play her, quote unquote, because you don't play her actively. Everything that she does and everything that she provides, she does so passively. First thing that you have to know, of course, is that you only ever play Kiperina in the Impromptu lineup. Otherwise, you would waste most of the things that she does, and she already does provide very little to your team. And if you would now waste a bunch of these little things already, then yeah, you can just throw her completely into the garbage can, you know. So first note is, play her in Impromptu or don't play her at all. Now let's take a look at her insight number 1 first. When allies consume Eureka, inspiration increases. After allied teammates or the Impromptu incantation score 2 critical hits, you gain +1 Eureka. That is very important, so please keep that in mind. It's a core part of her kit. At the end of the round, you gain 1 stack of Corona for every excess Eureka or Eureka consumed this round. This is another very core part and extremely important part of her kit are these Corona stacks, and you want to stack them up to 20 stacks as fast as you possibly can, and you can only do this by producing excess Eureka or consuming Eureka. And what characters in this game consume and produce Eureka every single turn? You guessed it, the Impromptu lineup. Now, why would you want to stack this up to 20 stacks as fast as possible? Because then you grant yourself the additional effect of providing 50% of the excess critical hit rate and convert it to critical damage for the Impromptu incantations. That is extremely good. You will find out why when we talk about her incantations, and you will see that Kiperina also provides not much, but a little bit of critical hit rate to your team already, and her ultimate amplifies this a little bit. And if you are now able to convert the excess critical hit rate to critical damage, that is like the best thing that Kiperina does in terms of supporting her team. Yeah, aside from providing these massive shields, of course. So good. With everything with all of this out of the way, her incantation number 1, it grants shields to your team and a little bit of critical hit rate. Now, the critical hit rate increases based on how much shield you actually have. This can stack up theoretically to 15%, but realistically speaking, this will never ever happen. So the crit rate that you provide with this is like 7.5 to 9% and not more than that. Then her incantation number 2 is where things become a tiny little bit interesting, only a tiny little bit, because you never want to actually use this incantation ever to begin with, because your allies provide way better options to you than this incantation for Kiperina would provide you with. But you deal a little bit of tiny damage to 2 enemies, and if you are able to consume 2 Eureka, you grant your Impromptu incantations +1 instance, so +1 attack for the Impromptu incantations. That is pretty damn good. So you want to make use of this if you can. But you have to keep in mind that Kiperina starts off with 5 Eureka, and she consumes 4 Eureka at the beginning of every single round to provide shields to your team passively and without the usage of AP. That leaves her with just 1 Eureka. That means you cannot consume 2 Eureka with this incantation to gain your Impromptu incantations +1 instance. So what you have to do is, if you remember, you have to score 2 critical hits this round with your teammates, and that would provide +1 Eureka to Kiperina. Now, she, after consuming 4 Eureka for the shields, she would now have, if you crit 2 times with your allies, have 2 Eureka ready to be consumed by this incantation and make your impromptu incantations at the end of the round deal more damage as they attack once more. This also is very important because it makes more usage of the critical hit rate that you provide. And you know, remember, the excess crit rate gets converted. You know how this goes. Then we have her ultimate, which is really bad ultimate to begin with. If you would, and I know a lot of people will be, playing Kiperina outside of Impromptu, then you don't even have an ultimate to begin with. But let me still tell you what it does. It inflicts cosmic radiation on all enemies that reduces their critical resist rate by a little bit. It dispels all debuffs, which doesn't really matter, right? You do, like, cleansing debuffs with an ultimate is really bad. You want this on your basic incantations, like not on an ultimate. I mean, come on. And the control status here is completely useless because you by default dispel 1 control statuses from all of your allies at the beginning of the round anyways. So this goes completely to shit, right? It already doesn't do anything. But if, and yeah, you have to, not in my opinion, it's a fact, you have to play her in Impromptu, because then this ultimate actually provides 6 points of inspiration to your Impromptu incantations. And that's actually really good, because remember, you can only store up to 5 inspiration on 1 incantation. That's the maximum, and with this ultimate providing you 6 points of inspiration is not too bad. But all things considered, this is a really shitty ultimate. All of your allies have way better ultimates than this, so yeah, again, you don't really ever want to use anything here with Kiperina, because all you need is the shields that she provides, and she does so passively, right? But yeah, again, since you provide all of this, all of this is a little bit stretched, you know, it's not that much, but you provide critical hit rate, and you want to make use of this, and you want to convert excess critical hit rate to critical damage and all of this stuff. And you see, like, everything here is based around inspiration and using Eureka and crit damage, and you want to attack as much as possible with your teammates so they score critical hits to provide you with extra Eureka. And you would waste all of this stuff completely if you don't play her in Impromptu. All you get is you passively provide shields to your team. Those shields are not bad, but they are also not as good as everyone makes you to believe they are. It's not that massive, you know, and you do not want these shields to deplete and everything. Yeah, I mean, I think you get the point after reading all of this. If not, then there's nothing I can do to convince you or help you out. But now, let's take a look at how this Impromptu team as a whole plays in-game. So here we go. Since there is nothing to Kiperina when it comes to active gameplay, I will explain the whole Impromptu team as a whole here one more time. So what you always want to start out with is this counter incantation with Voyager, because that will grant great buffs to you and your team. Now you want to use Alepht's buff incantation if you would have it. Now we don't have it, so we provide +1 AP to our entire team, and from here on out we want to use our main and sub DPS to actually deal damage. Since Voyager starts off with her ultimate, most of the times you can just use it turn 1, so that the Impromptu incantations at the end of the round that would normally be dealing damage to random enemies now focus the target that you actually want to focus. And from here on out you want to use Baccarola as much as possible, because First of all, she's your main DPS and she deals the most amount of damage in your team, and you want to accumulate Moxie as fast as possible with her, because her ultimate is also a core part of mid-maxing everything that the Impromptu team does. And you can see, Kiperina starts off with 5 Eureka, and at the start of every single round, she consumes 4 of these Eurekas to provide a whole bunch of shields to your team. There you go.
Don't take it on step.
And yeah, also this Corona stacks, yeah, you know, I explained everything further. And you see, you'd never want to use Kiperina actively, ever, right? It's like a very, very boring character, if I'm being honest. And you know, here in her incantation number 1, remember? Incantation number 2, excuse me. Remember that you never ever want to use this actively unless you can consume 2 Eureka with it. Since we can't, because we can see we only have 1 Eureka, we don't use it. We never use this buff incantation actively because she does it passively at the start of every single round. So, you know, what would be the point? Now, here we can see the point. Because if we just can't do anything else, right? We only have incantations now for Kiperina, then you always use whatever has the most amount of inspiration accumulated this turn. In our case, that would be her incantation number 2, so we just use it even though we cannot consume the Eureka because it had that 3 inspiration accumulated. And you know, like you see, Kiperina is a very, very boring character that pretty much doesn't do anything other than providing shields. That's really what it comes down to, like this critical hit rate that she provides. Yeah, that's good. That is very, very good, because the Impromptu team attacks a lot, and therefore this little bit of crit rate that she provides actually comes to fruition. You know, sometimes it's, of course, it's always a gamble, but you see the point. Yeah, and then again, you never want to use anything with her actively. You want to buff your team with Voyager and Aleph, and then you go nuts with Baccarola and Voyager all the time. So you can see my hand is really, really bad. So I have too many incantations with Kiperina, so I reroll. That's way better. So again, I buff with Aleph, I buff with Voyager, and then I go nuts with all of my other characters. Let me provide 1 AP to my team and then use Baccarola as much as I can. And that's how you play the Impromptu team. Now things get a little bit more interesting when we actually unlock the ultimates for Baccarola and Aleph. So yeah, let's do that and then talk a little bit more about how to play around the ultimates, because especially, yeah, both of those actually are very, very important to play correctly. Here we go, we have the ultimate unlocked for Baccarola. Now, the special thing about this ultimate is that it provides a buff called Quartet to one of your opponents, to one of your allies, excuse me. And the goal is to have Quartet active 3 times on 3 of your characters at the same time. And in order for you to do that is, you use this ultimate always on Voyager. That would lead to Baccarola and Voyager now being in the Quartet status. And now you have to aim at unlocking this ultimate as fast as possible before these buffs of Quartet run out. And then you can apply Quartet to a third of your a third character of your team, and then you min-max your damage, as everything that Baccarola does a whole bunch of more damage. So that is always your aim. And then again, just use my ultimate. Now I buff my team with Aleph. I need to accumulate as much Moxie as possible with Baccarola as fast as possible to get her ultimate again. So we're gonna do that. Plus 1 AP next round is always good. Now I only have incantations with Kiperina. I never want to use these, so I go with Voyager.
A blessing bestowed by fate.
Please join.
We need simply rely on the microphysics of power.
Eating.
There we go. Now we have Alep's ultimate unlocked.
Don't take it on step.
And that is very, very important, because you always want to use this ultimate at the very end of your rotation. That's pretty important. Why? Because, let me show you, if I would use this now, I would enter a status called hyperthemesia, and that would lock me out of using incantations for Aleph. So I always want to use this last. So AP +1 for next round, go nuts with my main and my sub DPS. Now, since I don't have another choice, I use the incantation with Kiperina that has the most amount of inspiration accumulated. And then I use Alep's ultimate, and what Alep's ultimate does is, the turn that you use this ultimate, it remembers all the incantations that you used this turn, all of them, and the inspiration accumulated onto these incantations is also remembered. So you want to make sure that in the turn that you use Alep's ultimate, you will deal as much damage as possible, and you will use up as many points of inspiration as you possibly can, because now next turn he would unload all of this. So yeah, and if your hand looks like this, everything is full of Kiperina incantations, you simply re-roll your hand, and yeah, you go nuts with your main and your sub DPSs. You buff, you attack with Baccarola, you buff with Voyager, right? You get the point. And now next turn, yeah, you use Kiperina's incantations if you have no other choice, and if there are a huge amount of inspiration points on it. End of this round actually, Aleph unloads everything that we did in the previous turn where we used his ultimate. He adds those incantations now to our rotation. And that is completely nuts, and also a very, very big part of the Impromptu lineup, because the inspiration points that we used last turn, they are here now one more time, added onto everything that we already do this turn. Like, it's actually incredible. And you know, this is how you play the Impromptu team. You pretty much, no, not pretty much. What you do is you buff with Voyager, you buff with Aleph, you grant yourself +1 AP with Aleph, and then you attack constantly with Baccarola. And yeah, keep this quartet status in mind.
Yes.
And that's really about it. You see, Kiperina does absolutely nothing. If you noticed that even the crit rate that she provides, even if she is played in the best possible team that she belongs to, in her, like, it doesn't get better for her. And still, the crits that we did, they were pretty much nothing. As you noticed maybe that we never used our incantation number 2 because we could not score 2 crits per round to accumulate another Eureka for us, for our incantation number 2 to actually do something, you know. So yeah, all of this crit rate and is like pretty much kind of useless. It still does something, because if you play Kiperina in the Impromptu lineup, then you accumulate a lot of excess Eureka and you use up a lot of Eureka, and that makes it so that the Corona stacks hit 20 really fast, and that converts excess critical hit rate into critical damage. But as you see, like, we pretty much never critted here. We never got the second Eureka up with Kiperina, and that's what I mean. Kiperina not only is a very specific character and can only be played in the Impromptu lineup, because if you don't play her in Impromptu, you, again, as I explained earlier, waste like a whole bunch of this very little that she does, right? She only provides a little bit of shielding to your team. That's it. Like, that's not worth pulling for right before the Assassin's Creed collaboration, which you don't know anything about yet, And right before the game-changing, game-breaking second anniversary that literally introduces the best DPS character in the entire game and has 2 new archetypes that comes into play, and then even we have information about 3.0 with Sentinel and Sharon. Sharon is kind of a must-pull as well, and to now waste your resources onto a very boring to play character that only provides shields to your team. I mean, it's up to you, but I would highly suggest you don't pull for Kiperina, you Kiperina, unless you have Baccarola and Aleph at your disposal, and or if you plan to play this impromptu team and you have either like Aleph and or Baccarola, then you should pull for Kiperina. If that's not the case, that is the easiest skip of your life. It's a very, very overrated and very, very boring character. So there you go, that's my suggestion. Should you pull for Kiperina? Absolutely not. Unless you have Baccarola and or Aleph, you love the impromptu and you will continue playing this team moving forward. That's the only way you would ever pull for Kiperina. But now let's take a look at her best in slot Psychubes, because there is something very, very interesting to talk about. So the first recommended Psychube for Kiperina is of course her signature Psychube that you can find and buy in this shop right here. It's called Aurora After Winter, and what it does, that when the carrier casts a buff incantation, you gain attack plus a little bit, and it can stack up to 2 times. It's very, very irrelevant because you do never actively use this attack stat with Kiperina anyways. And if the carrier is of the Star Afflatus, for every 1 Eureka consumed by allies, you grant critical damage to all of your allies, and this can stack up to 30 times. Now this is where it gets really, really good, because it is critical damage though. That's a little bit of a bummer. It's not critical hit rate, that would be better, but this is still very, very good, and this is, I would say, the best in slot Psychube if you play Kiperina in the impromptu lineup. If you don't, then let's talk about the next Psychube, which is Long Night Talk, because you don't have to scale up so much and you gain more stats right out of the gate. You know, here when the carrier has 2 or more positive status buffs, which you will always have because of your shields of course, then damage that plus 8% when attacking. Boom, right out of the gate you have already 8% more attack power. Then when the carrier uses a buff, which you will always use 2 buffs every single turn for free, then your attack is increased by 2%, and this can stack up to 2 times. So you see, you stack this way faster, you get more flat damage right out of the gate. But again, you will barely ever use this attack stat to begin with, so you could easily make an argument that this is completely useless. But nonetheless, this gives you more value than any other Psychube would if you don't play her in the impromptu lineup for some weird reason that I cannot identify. But if that's the case, then Long Night Talk is the best in slot. Remember, if you play her in the impromptu lineup, then you use her signature that you can buy in the shop. And that's really about it, guys. I hope this video was fun and informative. If you like Reverse1999 content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would really appreciate it. But until next time, don't forget to join the Discord server. Take care of yourselves, have a great day, and Kiperina.